The Last Tsar, thank you for writing the book. It was honestly one of my favorite books the last, I'd say, like 6 months. Could you introduce yourself and tell me why you decided to write your new book about the last Tsar Nicholas II?
My name is Tsuyoshi Hasegawa. I'm a retired professor in history at the University of California, Santa Barbara. My interest in the February Revolution went back about 60 years ago when I was an undergraduate student in Tokyo. And then I was very curious why the Russian Revolution that is supposed to implement equality and justice ended up in the monstrosity of Stalin's period. And, to do that, I told myself I have to go back to the Russian Revolution in 1917. And, to understand the nature of the Russian Revolution, you have to go back to the February Revolution at the beginning. And I studied and studied and studied. I got stuck in the February Revolution for 60 years.
So you must have found a lot of information in the past 60 years then.
I took a detour and went to the study of the Cold War and Russo-Japanese relations and the Pacific War and so on. And then about 30 years later, I came back to my first lab on February Revolution and revised it in 2017. And then I thought, I have to focus on one aspect of February Revolution, that's abdication, and then collapse of Romanov. And this is the result of my book.
And what motivated you to write specifically about the abdication?
Well, I think this is very important because the abdication of Nicholas II that led to the collapse, the fall of the Romanovs. 300 years of Romanov dynasty. That the fall of Romanovs, that's a very important event, right? Why not study 5 days that ended the Romanov? This is as important as the 10 days that shook the world. But nobody else has done it. That most of the history books, even professional history books, says, well, revolution took place and Nicholas abdicated and the Romanov dynasty ended. And so I would have to make a connection from the beginning to the revolution took place and the collapse of the monarchy. So that's what motivated the rest of the more detail about the processing which that the collapse of monarchy took place. And that's very important. Also, that I like to say, compared with the French Revolution, from the time it took 3 years from the attack of Bastille to the end of the monarchy, right? And what happened in 3 years in France took place in Russia 5 days.
There is one quote that from your book that actually represents that, yes, it's also the 5 days, but it might also be the past 22 years of Nicholas's reign. What you wrote in your book was, Nicholas said that he had tried his best to reign over Russia for 22 years and asked Rodzienko, for 22 years it was all a mistake? Rodzienko took a deep breath and answered, yes, Your Majesty, for 22 years you followed the wrong course. So maybe because for 22 years he was making the wrong decisions, that eventually in just 5 days it could like all collapse.
That's right. When Nicholas was not prepared to become the Tsar because he was not trained. He did not have any experience. But when he took the throne, I think he had a choice. One, will he go to the tradition of his grandfather, Alexander II, great reforms? right? And continue that great reforms, or the tradition of his father, Alexander III, who believed in autocracy, trying to refuse the participation of the officials and society into that. And then when he took throne, he chose the second option, that he inherited autocracy from his father. Well, he lived all his life until then. He lived on the shadow of the great autocrat father. And then when he took power, and he didn't really experience, he never even thought about the state affairs. And so he said, okay, I am going to inherit the autocracy that my father maintained. I am going to bequeath that autocracy to my son. That's the whole life was devoted to that mission. And that's his essence of his reign. That's why he said 22 years was a mistake.
Yeah, because what you wrote about in your book too is how he also felt like ruling Russia was like a God-like gift, right? It was something God assigned him to do. And I think that doesn't also really help with like leadership if you think it's sent by God. I could imagine it affects his ego in some type of form.
Machiavelli once said that it's a hereditary sort of authority had an easier time. But in order to maintain that authority, you have to be careful about. You have to, due to the change of the time, you have to adjust the system to the change of the time. This is first, and avoid crisis. Second,
Mhm.
and the third, avoid scandals. I think Nicholas II violated all those conditions.
Yeah, he did. And but even though he violated all those conditions, to me it's kind of fascinating that he was still able to manage for 22 years.
He went through serious crisis during his reign. When he had a coronation, a big, very important ceremonial coronation, and then after the coronation, uh, um, people came because there's tradition that, after the coronation there will be a free beer, and then a special commemorative cups will be distributed. So people gather in a field. But security was very bad, and the stampede took place, and hundreds of people uh, were killed in the stampede. And despite that, Nicholas and Alexandra, uh, under the advice of its very powerful uncles, danced in the French embassy. And so that at the first crisis, he gained the nickname called Nicholas the Bloody. And the second crisis is a Russo-Japanese war. Yeah, the upstart Japan defeated Japan. I mean Russia, the great power. Humiliation for great power, right? And then on the wake of the defeat, the workers marched to the Winter Palace because of the petition to improve uh, their life. They thought probably Tsar Nicholas would listen to us. They are fired upon by troops. And then again, hundreds were killed. Again, we enforced the nickname of Nicholas the Bloody. Okay, this is the second crisis, and then of course the most important, World War One, uh, because Russia suffered the humiliation of defeat on the Russo-Japanese War, and also Russia suffered the humiliation in 1912. Austria-Hungary took advantage of the weakness of Russia and gained that territory called Bosnia-Herzegovina. And that, again, Russia turned out to be not the big protector. And so now another suffered the humiliation. All those things really humiliated the Russians, and therefore that when the crisis of the prelude to World War One took place, as a Kremlin cannot suffer another crisis, so that Russia entered the war. Nicholas did not want to start the war, but he was pushed by his ministers and public opinion and then entered the war. So again, it's the third crisis. And then the World War One took place. It turned out that he was a very incompetent leader. And Russia suffered in Eastern Prussia and suffered great retreat. And then, and so he decided to change, he took over the Supreme Commander and replaced rather popular his cousin Nikolai Nikolaevich. And he became the Supreme Commander-in-Chief in summer of 1915.
I'm quite curious. What was the relationship like between him and his soldiers? Was it always bad or was it 50-50?
Well, most of the soldiers did not have a conception of, say, Russia as a nation. Their loyalty was their villages, their community. They didn't know why they are fighting, right? But they swore allegiance. They swore allegiance, and allegiance, I mean, both soldiers and officers swore allegiance to the Tsar, not to the nation. Swearing allegiance is a very important method by which that they enforce discipline among soldiers, right? As far as the officers are more educated, right? But they knew what was going on in Petersburg, the Rasputin's influence and so on. And then gradually, that 2.5 years of war, those officers came to realize that their swearing allegiance to the Tsar is divorced from swearing of the fighting for the nation. And so that in many ways, that among many officers, loyalty was shifted from the Tsar to the nation.
And did Tsar Nicholas II really feel like he was a good general?
He was not trained in military art. He was merely figurehead. He was not involved in any decisions or operations. What he was involved in appointment, dismissal of generals, and then this turned out to be sometimes very disaster because he appointed his favorite incompetent generals to certain positions.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, high command, all the generals are monarchists. And they wanted to preserve monarchy. But some of them thought it might be a good idea to remove Nicholas.
Or maybe they saw more like a future with a different Tsar stepping up.
Precisely, different Tsar. Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
That played a very important role during the October Revolution abdication drama.
Yeah. I think many didn't believe that it would go that far and eventually turn into like communist Stalin.
That's right. So I think the sequence of events is very important during the abdication. That what happened first and what kind of a decision was made, sort of thing. I don't think those guys, even all those guys, Rodjanko is the chairman of the Duma, is the parliament against the government. And General Alexei, is the chief of staff, and others. Maybe in the back of their mind, they might thought that it might be a good idea to remove Nicholas, right, from the position of the Tsar, and then distract, send Alexandra far away out of the political heats. I'm sure that they thought they had that in mind. I mean, some of them, like the another Duma politician called Gushkov, was very deeply involved in the conspiracy to palace coup to remove Nicholas, right? And so that I'm sure that they had that in mind, but they did. The events took place. The February Revolution, on February 27th, soldiers uprising took place, and they demanded, okay, this is the crisis. Okay, Nicholas, you abdicate. I don't think the abdication had taken place. That gradually moved from one step to another. Okay, first, when the February, maybe I'm going to go to abdication drama now here, but say February 27th, soldiers uprising took place. Nicholas was in Mogilev. But I'll take up a little bit. I tell you how. Nicholas was commander-in-chief. So he spent most of the time in the general headquarters, side of general headquarters called Mogilev, 500 miles from Petersburg, right? When Nicholas received the news that Rasputin was assassinated in December 16th, so the night of 16th, he decided to go back to the Imperial Palace. The Tsar's family lived in the place called Tsar Square because Alexander did not buy the capital, so they lived in about 15, 16 miles south of place called Tsar Square. That's where the Imperial Palace was. So he moved back to Imperial Tsar Square, right? And he spent 2 months there, right? And he decided, okay, it's time to resume my job as a Supreme Commander. So he decided to leave on the 22nd, February 22nd, right? And arrived in the Mogilev, general headquarters of Mogilev, on February 23rd. When he arrived there, he received 2 news. One, revolution started in Petrograd, the capital. Number 2, his children got sick with measles. And he stayed there. He did not leave immediately, Mogilev. He stayed at the 27th. And even worse news reached him. That's Petrograd. Revolution spread. Now the soldier mutinied, right? The crisis. Nicholas immediately ordered, as I said, to send troops from the front to suppress the revolution. No idea of compromise there here. Right? And then next morning, he left Mogilev to join the family. He joined his wife, who was struggling with the sick children, the 28th. And he traveled in a railway in a snow-covered countryside, right? And then reached a little town called Malaya Vishera, and he received the news that further on, the stations are occupied by the revolutionists. So he turned around, and instead of, he could not go to Saskosero as he planned through the road. So he turned around and went back to the town called Pskov, which is the site of northern front. That's about 160 miles south of Petrograd. And his plan was from there that he's gonna break through to Tsarskoye, join his family, right? But he arrived in Pskov, the site of the northern front, in the evening of March the 1st. So in 2 days, he was AWOL, absent, without taking any initiative, right? Without communication with the military leaders. But those 2 days are very crucial because revolution spread very, very quickly in Petrograd.
The train ride that eventually he meets, what was the name? Uh, Guklov and Shulgin. Those are two people. They went to the train.
There are two things you're talking about. One, I think he decided to leave Mogilyo for the general headquarters, right, on the 28th, to after himself, to join the family rather than to deal with the problem, crisis, and revolution. That itself tells you about where Nicholas' mind was. Nicholas' mind was constantly in Pasco wife who's struggling with the children. It's a very so that's another. So here, his decision to leave and then waste 2 days without any involvement in political process. That's a very crucial moment, right? And you're talking about Grushkov and Shulgin. That's Grushkov and Shulgin, a monarchist, and they came to Pskov to force Nicholas' abdication without knowing that Nicholas had already accepted abdication. Again, that's another irony. Another irony. The miscommunication and what they knew, what they did not know, fed the process of the revolution.
And they came without a lawyer, right? Without a judist, someone who knew the law.
Yeah, because you see that all those opposition talked about the political process, how to force Nicholas for abdication. Their idea, the succession, obviously, right? Succession, that if Nicholas abdicates, the throne go to his son, where we are all son, right? And then that under the regency of Samuel, right? And so that under the regency of brother is the second in succession, right? So that's very logical. So that was a sort of fixed idea. They never thought that other possibility. They never thought the possibility of Nicholas would violate that succession.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, Nicholas sort of threw a monkey wrench to the whole succession process, and pushed that whole situation a very confusion. And then in the confusion, those people with a political ambition for various reasons, political ambitions and then other ways, decided that probably monarchy should be sacrificed for the higher cause. For instance, Kulaski thought it is a great opportunity to enhance his authority, right? And because he was a member of the Duma committee and he was designated as a minister of justice and provisional government. At the same time, he was the vice chairman of another organization called the Petrograd Soviet, and he thought he represented the insurgent masses, right? So this is the chance to enhance his authority so that we can end the monarchy. Rodianko, on the other, he's a monarchist. But at the same time, he was very skeptical about how Mikhail could be a Tsar and maintain a monarchical system, right? And then also he was represented the Duma parliament. And this is the chance to enhance his authority with Duma as a center of the revolution. So that Kerensky and Rozhenko made a sort of unholy alliance, right? And so, okay, we're going to put an end to monarchy. Well, how about Alexei, General Alexei? He's another monarchist, right? Another monarchist, but he was more concerned about maintaining the whole cohesion of the armed forces.
So wasn't maybe there an opportunity that one of his uncles could step in? Because you just mentioned there was one uncle who was also one of the military leaders, and he was quite popular too.
Not his cousin Nikolai Nikolaevich.
Yeah, exactly.
Nikolai Nikolaevich was probably the most powerful member of the Romanov. But the problem with Nikolai Nikolaevich that he was disliked by other relatives because he was not, he's not, in a line of succession to begin with, right? And if Nikolai Nikolaevich were to assume the present Tsar, then this is also illegal. Illegal because he does not have the right to succeed the throne. Because before that, many other grand dukes there. That's one thing. Also, another thing is that Nikolai Nikolaievich, the wife, was originally instrumental in introducing Rasputin. He was Rasputin to the Imperial Palace. Eventually, their relationship became sour. But the two black sisters of Montenegro, who are deeply involved in science and occultism, those things, and so that's too another sort of negative aspect. But the most important thing, the opposition of Nikolai Nikolaevich, some of the opposition leaders were the palace planning a palace coup against against the emperor. He thought he's going to recruit Nikolai Nikolaevich because he's the most powerful member of the Romanovs, right? Well, he decided not to participate in the palace coup, but he knew that palace coup was hushed, but he did not do anything to prevent it. So that he was very sympathetic to the idea of removing Nicholas. He did not think very highly of Nicholas. He did not think very highly of Mikhail, right? His brother. So maybe he might have thought that if the throne were to come, then it should come to him, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, the great, after the revolution, great opposition to him. Alexei was in favor of welcoming Nikolai Nikolaevich as a commander-in-chief. That would be great to maintain the confusion of the army. But he was opposed by the new leaders. He was opposed by new leaders because Kerensky, for instance, Kerensky wanted to be a really good, great leader of a new revolution in Russia. He did not want to have any rival. There's there is a term called Bonapartism. Bonapartism. That is that the military leader would rise up, right, and then become the leader, and then nobody in the provisional government wanted to have that, and so that he succumbed to that pressure. And probably Nikolai Nikolaevich knew very well that probably monarchy would not last even under his helm. And then he decided to cooperate and decided to accept his resignation. And he retired to Crimea and exile.
And he lived happily ever after?
Yeah, after, yeah. Well, what happened after Nicholas resigned, I think is also very important, very interesting, and it is unknown that when he abdicated, he never thought the monarchy will be ended, right? Because he transferred the throne to Mikhail, and he took it for granted Mikhail would accept the throne. This, you know, who would refuse the throne, right? Although that he and Mikhail never consulted. No communication between the Tsar, the abdicating Tsar, and Mikhail. Mikhail didn't even know the throne was given to him until that he was informed early in the morning. There's no communication. But anyway, so Nicholas never thought that his abdication would lead to the collapse of the monarchy. But when he left Mogilov right after he decided to abdicate, right? And he was going back to he was going to back Mogilov. Right? He could not go to Tsarskoye. He could go, but and he decided to go back to general headquarters to Mogilov, Pskov. And on the way, he learned that the Mikhail refused to accept the throne. And he realized that, that would lead to the collapse, the fall of Romans. He changed his mind again. He changed his mind that he's not only he is going to just advocate for himself, the throne would go to his son, Alexei. He jotted that decision to a piece of paper and the telegraph blank paper, right? When he reached Mogilov, right, and he handed that piece of paper to Alexei, right, and this is my decision. Could you contact Rodchenko that I changed my mind again? Alexei looked at this piece of paper and says, "Sire, it was too late. It was too late." Put the little piece of paper and spoke it. That's the end of his change of mind.
It's fascinating that he didn't really think it through. Because you think, like, especially as a leader, you'd think about the next steps. You think about what if, like, you ask yourself that question quite often, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's very interesting when I was, working on it, writing about this. You have to realize that the process is not predetermined or inevitable process. Lots of people say that what happened was inevitable. Monarchy, the end of monarchy was pure and that sort of thing. But that to reach the collapse of Soviet Union, people had to make a decision. It's the people's decision, active decision. One decision lead to another. This another decision lead to another, right? And eventually, just like the dominoes, it eventually and ended up in a collapse of the monarchy. But you have to understand that this is how the decision we make. Decision. Japanese have a saying that if you go 1 millimeter ahead, beyond that there's a darkness, right? People are making a decision in the darkness without knowing what this decision will lead to, right? And then once you make, say, one step, right, to the right, the possibility of going to the left is precluded, right? And then this is right, another node, go to the right or left, right? Those things are just like a dominoes. And that's very important. The sequence is important. People's decisions are, human agent that does decision. This is very important. And they are just they're acting in a dark, without knowing what their actions would bring.
What you mentioned to me is that if you look at this, you kind of see like it's a chess game of three players, right? And if you analyze it from abroad, and this is more like an opinion question, what was like a strategic move that one of the players made that you found the most fascinating? Where you said that was genius move.
Oh, I don't know if it's possible. Some people say this is a comedy of errors. So, I think they made wrong decisions. But say, well, the probably big mistakes. The most important tragic mistake is, if there is a last chance for saving monarchy, was his abdication, first abdication, single abdication. But double abdication, I think, was the death nail, because I think it just totally put an end to any possibility of saving monarchy.
But a big part of not abdicating was because of the illness of his son, right?
You have to understand that Nicholas' family is a very, very closely knit family. Nicholas really loved his family, particularly loved his son. He sort of told him he could not have the idea of parting, uh, living apart from him. Well, you can understand any father or any mother would understand that feeling. But the problem is that he was the emperor. That's a totally, he was this family was not merely family matter, it's a state affairs. And that distinction, he made no distinction between family affairs and state affairs. That's another very important weakness.
Because I also read that when he went to England, he was kind of laughing at the fact that they were like a constitutional monarchy. Like in his head, he couldn't even like understand that something like that could exist. It seemed so far away for him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Um, he could not. He could not accept. Well, he was young. He was in homeschool. Most influential tutor was the man called Bonapartism. Is a reactionary sort of head of the Holy Synod, and he drummed into his head that constitution and parliamentary or constitutional monarchy, constitution is totally incompatible with peaceful autocracy. He firmly believed that. I think he believed to the end. He believed to the end. And when he was, his essence was to uphold the peaceful autocracy, unencumbered by any forces, either his ministers or his opponents, junior politicians. That destroyed any possibility of any compromise, any deliberation, any political process, in fact. And then he adhered to that tradition until the March the 1st, when finally he was convinced, he was persuaded by General Ruski to accept constitutional monarchy. In many ways, his world is destroyed, because his right, his essence was precisely to uphold that principle of autocracy. So, in a way, accepting abdication was easier for him than accepting constitutional monarchy. Constitution is the most hated word that to him. He was forced to accept it, so that he had to atone that, that the sacrifice, and abdication was easier for him to accept.
If you analyze this, is there anything that you notice that could be like a crucial lesson for future politicians?
History never repeats itself. That Marx said it can repeat itself first as a tragedy and secondly as a sort of a comedy. I disagree with that. History never repeats itself. But history, why do we study history? We have to learn something. Charles Dickens said that history is nothing unless that you can learn something from it. And it's a cliche, but history rhymes. There's certain sort of similarity. You can find a sliver of similarities between the past and the present. And in fact, that the historian's job is a dialogue between the present and the past. And therefore, that you can say maybe you can pick up certain themes that might resonate with the current crisis. Particularly when I was writing this, there's a world, the crisis of the rise of authoritarianism throughout the world, including my own country and the United States. And then sometimes I thought about it, autocracy, relationship, autocracy, democracy, and that sort of thing. And then I sort of put some ideas in here and there. Some people did, some readers don't agree with me, but that's fine. But I think that if I were to say that what kind of lessons that we can learn from this abdication drama, Nicholas abdication drama, I would say the most important thing is that leadership matters. Leadership is very important. And also that I would say, this is from Machiavelli, that the quality of prince is determined by the counselors he chooses to surround himself by. In other words, he is surrounded by yes men and yes women, and to only give advice to the opinions that only the prince likes to hear, then the country is in deep trouble. You have to have they're clear, very important advisors. But Nicholas had a good advisors, like a Sergei Vite, like a Storapen. He shunned away those because those powerful advisors, they killed the advice that he didn't like. For instance, get rid of Rasputin, for instance. I thought, personal matters. You have nothing to do with this personal matter, right? And he shunned away from those advisors. That's the bad news. And so that's what I was. Remember, third, I think, take away that I think is the importance of the rule of law. There's the rule of succession law, and he threw it away. And you have to, I think, a rule of law that even the highest authority has abided by, I think, is a very important sort of ballast of the structure of the stability of the state. He threw away all those things. That's what I think. That's the lessons that we can learn.